Right, Jake. So, just a quick summary of the stuff we spoke about yesterday. So, first of all, posture. Right. So, basically, as I was saying to you, posture, the main criteria when it comes to posture is just to make sure that your body is not in its own way. Right. So, whether you're standing or sitting, the process is basically the same. So, just upright, shoulders back a little bit, and always looking upwards and outwards. Okay. And as well as that, it can be useful to just kind of roll your shoulders back, roll the neck, roll your head around, and just let it loose, right? Just to kind of, because a lot of the time it's easy to hold tension, your shoulders, your neck, and that kind of thing without really knowing it. And as I always say, tension here is restriction. So we don't want any of that. So completely loose here, okay? So beyond that, there's not really a whole lot more thinking you need to do about it. Just always kind of upwards, forthright, okay? So next thing is the breathing, the belly breathing. So a bit of getting used to it in it, okay? So as I was saying, the best way I can put it is to try to make a balloon with your belly, okay? So just kind of right down here, okay? So just when you're doing that kind of thing, just be very aware of your chest and shoulders. Make sure none of this is happening, right? So it's all in here. So 2 exercises I want you to try to do are going in like we did yesterday, going in for 3, out for 5. And then the longer ones are important too, because the longer it is, the more control you need over what you're doing. So in for 5, out for 8, in for 7, out for 11 are kind of pretty good numbers to go for. They're somewhat arbitrary, but they work. Now, when you're on the exhale, right, make sure when you're doing those exercises, particularly the longer one, it can be tempting if you're exhaling for an entire 11 seconds to kind of resist the air with your lips, right? But that defeats the purpose. We want all of that control happening from the diaphragm, okay? And the other exercise then is to hit that abdominal stretch. So when you really kind of fill the belly, right, you'll feel a kind of a stretch in your abdominals, right? So basically what we're looking to do there is strengthen, okay? So this should feel like work, okay? I want you to do this at least 15 times in a row, if not 20, 25. Do it to the point where it really starts to feel like labor, and then do another 10 beyond that point. That way it'll actually work. It'll give you a return on it. So it's just simple enough. Just posture up and And when you breathe in, make sure you're really hitting that stretch and then pulling it just a little bit tighter before you release, right? We want it to be quick, but we want it, more importantly, to be complete, okay? Next thing. So we started off at the bottom of the C major scale. So just, okay, so, now, so that's kind of, it's not super low, but it's quite low, right? So projection is going to be an issue there. Now, we'll be talking a bit more about projection later on, but basically, to keep in mind that projection at the lower end is not the same as the higher end. It's a different kind of process, because you can't quite push as hard when you're on the lower end, because then pitch tends to kind of creeps up when you push too hard on it. So you have to rely on tone more than force from the diaphragm, if you know what I mean. So in other words, what we're trying to go for is, instead of that sort of soft, breathy tone, to something more transitioning into that harder tone, right? Because that cuts through better. It's more present. Okay, so just take any low note and just move it about, right? Bring the chin down, make sure you're using that space in your oral cavity for that resonance, and just try to develop the hardness in that, okay? We don't want to necessarily go to an extreme, but going to an extreme in your own time is a good way of exploring things, having an idea of knowing what too much actually sounds like, right? It's usually, too much is usually a lot more than people think it is. So just go nuts with it, and just explore the tones that you can get out of your own voice. So then there's the major scale. Now, as I was saying to you, when you're in some kind of a major key, which much more often than not you will be, one of the things that means is that the notes that you're most likely going to be singing, not guaranteed, there are, notes outside of the key. It's not uncommon. But generally speaking, the notes that you're going to be singing are the notes of the major scale. Now, what defines the major scale is, and we'll go through this in more detail, we kind of just dipped around and did a little bit of everything yesterday. The notes of the major scale, you start at your starting note, whatever that happens to be. In this case, we'll talk C, so C major. And it's a particular selection of 7 out of the 12 notes that there are, right? And there's a lot of different, there's 12 different major scales, right? But the shape of the scale is always the same, right? The only difference between one major scale and the next is just which note it starts on. Once you have your starting note, it goes up by a tone. That's 2 semitones, 2 of your basic units of pitch. So tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Okay? So the reason this matters is because if you can navigate the major scale better and you can sing it just with only one note to go off, your ability to navigate the pitch of any given song in a major key will be much better as well. So for example, if we start off on C, and obviously we can go back down as well. And sustain at the top and the bottom as well. Okay, so, and as well as that, whenever whenever you start, always make sure that you're sure of where you're starting, right? It's all well and fine to kind of launch into it, and you should always kind of hit the ground running with a nice bit of energy, but be sure of it, right? Feel it out a little bit at the start, assuming you have the opportunity to do that. Well, when you're practicing, you should anyway. So just, there we go. There, you can kind of feel yourself locking in with the accompaniment, and then away you go. So just keep that in mind and never assume pitch. So your pitch is good. You've got no issues there, but it's always important never to assume it. You're always listening and reacting and adjusting. Okay, so kind of think of it that way as well. Okay, so good bit to think about there, but I want you to do those breathing exercises every day, okay? And another thing as well, the second one where we're doing that, I want that to happen every single time you go to sing anything at all, okay? It's really kind of nail that habit in, so it's just not a question. That's just how you breathe when you're singing, and you don't have to think too much about it. Okay, we'll leave it at that. I'll see you next time.